Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming along. I've noticed it's just raining outside, so I'm not getting wet for the first time in quite a long time. We've had such lovely weather. Anyway, welcome. My name is Lynn Harrison. I'm Paintings Conservator at National Gallery, and I'm a member of the UK Museums and Heritage Sustainable Packing Group. I'm here representing that group. I'd like to welcome you to this, our second event, Sustainability and Conservation series that is co-organised by the UK Museums and Heritage Sustainable Packing Group and Claire Richardson, who's with us tonight, Head of Conservation, in her role as Head of Conservation and as part of her Work with Go Green project. Tonight we've got two brilliant speakers. I'm really pleased that they've come to this evening's event, outstanding speakers in the leaders in their field of both sustainability and preventive conservation, so we're really lucky to have them here. And they're both going to share some insights into the sustainable initiatives that they're leading in the field. First up tonight, we've got Lorraine Finch, who's standing here. And I've just been talking to Lorraine about her bio, what I was going to say, and I was going to kind of see it, but I'm not, because it's so impressive. I would like to just share it. I'd like to read it to you so that we can welcome Lorraine to her speech. So Lorraine is the director of her company, LFCP, which is accelerating cultural heritage sectors' climate and environmental action through research, knowledge sharing, and resource creation. Examples of these include her book, when did it come out? 2022, yeah?
Yeah.
Low cost, no cost tips for sustainability and cultural heritage, which provides actionable solutions for implementing sustainable practices and an open access sustainability rider, which enables museums, libraries, archive professionals to embed sustainability into every decision. And it's a really user-friendly book. It's very practical. Thank you. So, Lorraine advocates for an international stage for sustainability and cultural heritage and participates in many conferences, leading workshops, training and publishing books and articles, collaborating with leaders in the field in the USA and in Europe. In 2024, she collaborated with the National Archives UK to develop carbon literacy training for archives and carbon literacy for conservation and collections care. And it's a certified course accredited by the Carbon Literacy Project and partnered with the Getty Conservation Institute. I can attest to this. I've been through the carbon literacy training and it's excellent. It's really excellent. It's very enlightening and very useful. I've learned a lot, understand a lot more about what we can do. Lorraine is founder and chair of the Institute Conservation and Sustainability Group. She's a director of Climate Museums UK and an accredited conservative archives, photographs, film and sound. In recognition of her dedication and influence in sustainability, Lorraine was presented with the David Middleton Sustainability Award, was crowned as Entrepreneur, I don't know what this is,
Entrepreneur.
F Entrepreneur. Also
also 2025.
Thank you. Which is?
It's an initiative to encourage women in entrepreneurship, and this year was specifically awarded for sustainability.
Fantastic. And you're a finalist for the inaugural National Green Growth Award.
Thank you.
So, yeah, come. So, Lorraine talk, Unwrapping Sustainable Packaging, Rethinking Our Approaches. Would you like to start?
Yeah. Thank you. Right. Thank you, Lynn, for that excellent introduction, and welcome to you all today, and also welcome to anybody who is watching the recording subsequent to the live event today. So let me get started. So this is what I'm going to be talking about, which is unwrapping sustainable packaging. And here you have my contact details, so if any of you have any questions afterwards, if there's anything that you want to have clarified, or you just simply want to get in contact with me, then please do. I'll be putting them up again at the end as well, so if you didn't manage to get them down now, don't worry about that, they'll be coming back again. So Lynn has already gone through all of this, so we've got the low cost, no cost tip, so this is just some introduction into who I am and what I do. So with my business, as Lynn said, I'm accelerating climate and environmental action in cultural heritage through knowledge sharing, resource creation, and research. And here are some examples of what I've been doing. So the book, as I was saying before we started today, I wrote because I was frustrated with people saying I can't take any action. And the reasons they were giving me for not taking any action is they've got no money, they've got no time, and they feel like a small cog in a very big machine, so they lack that advocacy. So in order to counter this, I wrote the book because low cost to no cost actions don't take any time. It says in the book, costs nothing. And it doesn't matter how insignificant you feel, you don't need any permission to take low cost to no cost actions. You can also see something that was mentioned again, which is the sustainability rider. It's available free of charge off my website. So if you want, it's based on equity, Green New Deal's Green Rider. And if you're negotiating a contract, say you're negotiating an employment contract, or you're negotiating a contract with a supplier, or if you're having discussions around a project, there's lots of hints and tips there about areas that you could consider as you start that project or within your contract. There is also on the website an open access version for you to put your comments in, so anything that you think needs to be changed, any areas that are missing, anything that you would like to see added into it, it's there for you to feed into. So, as I say, together we'll be able to create something much better. The Sustainability Rider is available under a Creative Commons license, so you can take that and you can do absolutely anything that you want with it under the terms of the Creative Commons license. And then also mentioned was my carbon literacy course that I developed last year, Carbon Literacy for Conservation and Collections Care. As Lynn said, it's a certified course accredited by the Carbon Literacy Project. So, if I quoted this to you, it's time to stop waffling so much and say that the evidence is pretty strong that the greenhouse effect is here. When would you say that was spoken? Would that have been spoken last month, a year ago, 2 years ago? Well, it was actually spoken in 1988, following the hottest summer then on record. So we've known for many years that we have a problem with the climate. And if I asked you another question, if I asked you to name the most fundamental breakthrough that we've had in climate physics since 1979, what would you say? Now that's actually a trick question because there has been no fundamental breakthrough in climate physics since 1979. All we've had is refinement. So, as I say, we've known we've had a problem with the climate for some time. We know the impact that we're having, and yet still we keep waffling. So given our current level of emissions and our lack of action globally, we are on course for a 3 degree to 6 degree rise above pre-industrial levels in global temperatures. So what does this actually mean for us? So this is what will happen, this is what's predicted to happen at 4 degrees of warming. So if you look at the green areas, those are going to be the areas where we're still able to grow food. So think about where conflict is currently happening and that shift that there's going to be in political power. The yellow areas are uninhabitable deserts, that's quite a lot of Europe. And the red areas, including those on the UK, are those areas that are going to be lost to sea level rises. And as I was saying earlier, I live on the east coast of England, that's my home gone, so there's going to be a lot of migration and internal migration within the UK. So that's the climate emergency. This is the future that is predicted if we don't act. So human-induced global warming is just one of a number of crises at play. Another is the environmental crises. We have 9 planetary boundaries, which we must not cross if we are to keep the planet as safe and habitable. If we push our demands to any extent beyond which any of these boundaries are breached, we risk destabilising the planet, permanently debilitating nature and removing its ability to maintain a safe and benign environment. So climate change and the biodiversity loss, as you can see on here, are the core boundaries which alone, if crossed, could bring about destabilisation of our planet. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, came to this talk because this was supposed to be about sustainable packaging, so why have we now gone off into these scary, quite terrifying facts? So the reason for this very short examination of our current situation is that we really must look the reality in the eye so that when we move on to looking at the opportunities and solutions, we do it with full understanding of what is required. So an understanding of the seriousness of our situation and the need for urgency. The future that I've outlined is one we need to avoid, and we can avoid that future. To do so, we need dramatic transformation in our lives and in our workplace and society in general. So we need that systemic change. We are in an emergency and we cannot continue with business as usual. We cannot continue to host exhibitions, pack and store our objects, care for collections and build buildings to house our objects as if the status quo of a stable climate with the same levels of rainfall, same temperatures, same weather will continue. It won't, we know this, we can see it, and it isn't. So we need to act and design for a different future. Now, when I travel around to lots of different museums, lots of different archives, I am quite often asked for what's the alternative? So, what alternative material can I use? What alternative packaging can I use? What alternative solvent can I use? Now, they are coming, but they are coming painfully slowly. And I do understand the reason for this. You know, we need to research and we need to test before we release anything into the conservation world, just in case it actually does some damage to our collections. But they're not coming quickly enough, given the urgency and the seriousness of our situation. So it's not really a case of doing things the same, but with different. It's about doing things differently, full stop. I want to, though, however, give you a brief walk through some of the projects, the initiatives that are running, looking at the alternatives, because like I say, they are coming and there's some great work being done. So here's one. This is the Green Art Project. So its main objective is to produce safe and effective solutions for corrective and preventive conservation of cultural heritage, based on environmentally friendly and low-impact materials obtained from renewable natural sources or recycled waste. And they're looking at cleaning materials and gels. So you can see there is an event coming up on May the 20th. So you can actually sign up for that if you're interested. And there's a link there for you as well, and the programme of what they have, the programme for what they're doing on the 20th of May. So you can see they're looking at green and sustainable materials for wet cleaning, surface cleaning, guidelines for greener selection of solvents. So there's a lot of really interesting information coming out of that meeting. Another project that's happening, another initiative, and I should mention it, is the one we're all enjoying today. So this is the UK Museums and Heritage Sustainable Packaging Group. So they are aiming to establish new sustainable standards for packing and transporting artworks in order to support loans, exhibitions and collections movements being as sustainable possible. They are working collaboratively and efficiently by pooling resources and expertise across the UK and working with external partners to examine the materials we currently use, as well as alternative approaches and packing to find combinations that reduce waste and allow reuse and recycling. We also have this. So this is the Natural History Museum. It's their new gallery that they've just opened called Fixing Our Broken Planet. For this, part of this was to make sure that the materials that they were using in here were sustainable. A lot of those new materials had to be tested to make sure that they were safe to use with the collections that have been put on display. So they were body tested. Quite a few of the new materials that were tested actually failed. So there's that body of information and research sitting there at the Natural History Museum that we should be able to have access to. But as I stated, what we need really is the transformational change, and we should now be doing that. We should be doing that now. We shouldn't be talking about it anymore. We should actually be doing it. But as I say, I quite often get asked for alternatives. And so we need to rethink what we're doing. And I've got an example for you here. So this is from a museum. So I was asked to go to the museum and suggest sustainable alternatives to their packaging materials for their collections. What I normally do when I go to visit somebody is sit down for the first half an hour or so, have a cup of tea and a chat with them, because you get to know them, you get to know what their issues are, their problems are, and you get to know the people who build that rapport. Within that first 10 minutes of that sitting down, having a cup of tea, chat, it became very obvious that their biggest problem was not finding alternatives for their materials, but actually the fact that they had no inventory system for their collection. So this is about rethinking, it's about doing things differently. They had materials to store their collections across 3 different buildings on site, but they didn't know where anything was. So 5 years ago, they might have ordered 6 rolls of Tyvek. Don't know which one of those 3 buildings they're in. Next time they needed a roll of Tyvek, they couldn't find it, didn't know they had it, so they would just order another roll of Tyvek from the supplier. As you can see on the right-hand side, on the right-hand side, if you wanted one of those boxes and it was at the back, there was absolutely no way you could get to it, or it would take you probably half an hour to dig everything out and get the box from the back. It was just simply easier to order something new. Most of these are sitting on the floor. They're not in museum storage, they're in reused buildings. There's water sources in there. There was a toilet and a sink. So if anything happens, their materials get damaged. And so, they lose the materials. There's a lot of money sitting there as well. These materials are not cheap to buy. So it became very clear that what they needed to have was not alternatives to the materials that they were using, but actually a centralised inventory system so that they knew what they had and where to find it to prevent that wastage. So what we need to do really within the sector is this. We need to question the norm. We need, as I say, to rethink and re-examine what we are doing. So think about what you're doing. Are you doing it that way because that's the way it's always been done? Do you need to do it? Does that object need that much packaging, or does it need any packaging at all? Does that collection need repackaging? Can you do it differently? And I've got another example for you here. This is from something I was doing. So this is a library clean, and it was a mold outbreak on a library. And they didn't want the library cleaned in situ, so they said, can you pack everything up, take it to your studio and clean it there? So the normal procedure is to put everything in plastic crates. So that's instantly what I did. I went online and I thought, okay, how many plastic crates will I need? How much are they going to cost? And I thought, hang on a second, why have I done that? Why have I gone straight to getting a plastic crate? Can I not get something that is cardboard? My big concern around cardboard is potential contamination, but also the cardboard not being strong enough. So these boxes that you can see, they are double-walled cardboard. Take the bases up really quite tightly so the bottoms didn't give. They worked really, really well. Much better than plastic crates, because plastic crates taper. So if you're trying to pack square books into a crate that tapers, you can't get as many books in. These are square. They've also got hand holes in, so you can actually put your hands in and pick the boxes up and move them really easily, which you can't do so easily with crates. And these are just available quite simply online. These are for people who are moving house. And this is what they call the co-benefits of sustainability action. So the plastic boxes, if I had bought the ones that we normally use in conservation, the really useful boxes, was £266.72 plus VAT and delivery, remembering that you pay VAT on delivery also. The cardboard boxes plus tape and the tape dispenser, £46.74. It's an 82% saving, so this is the co-benefit of thinking differently, of taking that sustainability actions. So I quite happily went along to another museum and said, oh, look what I've done, this is really clever, I've not used the plastic boxes. And they said to me, yes, but you could have hired them. So that would have been even better sustainability action, so we can always learn. So questioning the norm also asks us to think about how we work and also reflect on our attitudes to our professional standards. So in conservation, we have this idea of good or best. So we try to do everything that's best. We try to be perfect. But is it good, or are we after best? Are we pursuing excellence, or are we pursuing perfection? So in conservation, we do have this idea of perfection, the ideal, the fact that everything has to be perfect. It has to be the ideal. It has to meet the ideal standards. Now, this is not the case. We will never meet the ideal. We can never be perfect because they do not exist. Trying to achieve this comes with climate and environmental and social costs, as well as costs to our mental health and well-being. And again, I have another example for you here. So, talking to one of the conservation suppliers, they make their own boxes as well as buying them in from other suppliers. If they have a slight scuff on the outside, so still a perfectly usable box, but it's got marked during the manufacturing process or the transportation from the manufacturer to the conservation supplier, they were finding that when they sent those out to conservators, the slight scuff on the outside meant that the conservators were rejecting them. They were sending them back and saying, no, I'm not using it, it's not good enough, there's something wrong with it, it's got a mark on the outside. It's still doing the job that it's supposed to do, it just has a slight scuff mark on the outside. So they stopped sending them out. What they use them for now, given that these are conservation grade materials, they are suitable for the long-term storage of collections, is they are using for packaging materials when they go out. So if you've made a small order and it fits into one of these boxes, you might find that it comes in one of these. Or if you're making a large order and you're on a pallet and there's spaces in the pallet, they fill the empty spaces in the pallet with their conservation grade boxes. Utterly ludicrous. They are perfectly capable of going into a collection for the next 40, 50 years and being used to store. And this is the outcome of our pursuit of perfection and our pursuit of best. So for me, I actually clean and I reuse boxes. So one of these boxes is 30 years old. It's no longer got archive collections in it. I actually use it in my studio and I've got my own paper stored in it. But I will take boxes that have had collection materials in, I will just vacuum out the inside, make sure they're clean and put another collection in there, depending on what the collection is. So we could introduce a rating system. So we could have good boxes for our stars of the collections, the things that we want to keep for a very long time, through to basic. So for those materials, only have a short life or are not required for a particularly long time, don't get the same level of packaging. So what we're actually after within the profession is excellence, not perfection, and we're after good, not best. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples now of where organisations have thought differently. So this is the National Library of Scotland, and they have embarked on a boxing programme. So when they carried out a survey of the collection in 2020, they discovered that 50% of the collection is boxed. And it is their ambition to have everything boxed or in secondary protection. But they are doing it differently from how you would expect it to be done. So what they've done is they've got side-on boxing and they've got cabinet boxing. So the ones on your right-hand side is the side-on boxing. So they aren't doing it the traditional way when you walk up to a library shelf where the books run across the shelf, they are doing front to back. So they are using the entire length of the shelf, or the entire depth of the shelf. The box that's running the entire depth of the shelf is one box and all of the books goes into that box. This has increased the amount of storage space that they have. It's also reduced the amount of materials that they are actually using to box their collections. And the really amazing thing from this is it's delaying the date at which they will require a new building for storage. So significant impact on carbon emissions and on sustainability. The other one on your left-hand side is the cabinet box. That is an entire box where everything, all of the books on that one shelf, go into that one great big box. I know an archivist from Aviva who thought of doing this many years ago, and we were designing shelf boxes, we called them, so everything went on one shelf. It's reducing costs, so because they're using less materials, it's reducing the amount of materials that they're using, and it's also reducing the date that they need to build a new building for storage. It's also... Yeah.
So can I just ask, I don't quite understand, how are these loaded?
So they're that way. So they go front to back. So they don't go across the shelf, which is the traditional.
So they go down the depth?
They go down the depth, yeah.
Right.
So they get significantly more books on the shelf. And they cost up, each shelf costs, as real estate, costs £400 per shelf. So you want to use every space on that shelf before you move on to the next one. So that's what they're doing. And also, as part of this project, they have been working in conjunction with Harriet Watt on a PhD to look at the buffering impact that the boxes are having between the external environment, so the environment outside of the box, and the environment inside the box. And what they've discovered is that, yes, boxes are producing a significant buffering effect. So that's meant that in some parts of the library they've switched off their air conditioning, their HVAC system, and in others that they have widened the parameters in which the collection is stored in. So again, that's having a significant reduction in energy usage, so the emissions associated with energy usage, and also is saving money for the library. Another example I have for you, this is a very recent example. This comes from the National Museums of Scotland, and these are their textile box covers. So they cover and protect their textile boxes for quarantine, freezing and transport, which they used to wrap in polythene, but they are now using canvas, which is excess of roll, so they're saving that waste. And they have made wrappers for their boxes. So as well as wrapping those boxes that are going for quarantine, freezing and transport, they now have made wrappers to fit small trays which are used to move objects around. The conservator stated, "They've been brilliant, saving so much time, as well as all the plastic sheets and sticky tape needed for sealing boxes and trays for objects. Easy to wipe clean with just water too." So they're reusable. So they don't get just used once, they get used time and time and time again. So as you can see, what we need is change. So in spite of this need for transformational change, and that we cannot continue business as usual, I do continue to hear from the sector on almost a daily basis why we can't change. So all of the reasons why change is impossible. So as I said earlier, the prompts for my book, all of the usuals: money, time, lack of resources, no knowledge, the need to ask for permission, so the lack of advocacy, and increasingly the barrier I'm hearing is the care of collections. So the concern that collections are going to be damaged if we change. So for example, if we make changes to the environmental conditions, or if we share a courier with another museum, or if we hold fewer exhibitions per year, or if we use items for our own collections for exhibitions rather than shipping items around the world, or if we use packaging materials. I could go on and on. So there is an unwillingness within the sector to embrace this transformational change that's required. But we must change. There is no point tinkering at the edges. We need to do more. We need to do more than just that incremental change, because winning the race slowly just means losing. Now, don't get the wrong idea. Don't get me wrong. We need to make all of these small changes as well. And I'm not saying that they don't make a difference, because they do. So this is an example from Preservation Equipment. They have saved between 1,500 and 3,500 square metre of materials from being wasted per year by developing what they call an eco-wrap roll wrapper for just their Tyvek and tissue paper, so just two of the products that they sell. These roll wrappers, they don't adhere to the surface of the material. So if you remember when you get materials within your conservation studio, they used to be wrapped with tape to stop them unrolling. So the first part of the roll you just used to cut off and discard, because it was either torn because the tape had been on it, there were remains of tape, and it was just damaged, so you would just cut it off and you'd work further in. Because Preservation Equipment have now developed this eco-wrap roll, there's no adhesive on there, or no tape, so you can use the whole thing. Like I said, that's made an amazing difference, because that's saved so much material, nothing is stuck to the object. But we do need to be bigger and bolder. So we need to embed sustainability in our practice. Every decision has to be taken with climate change and sustainability in mind. And every decision that we make has to start with the question, is this good for the climate, the planet, and people, or isn't it? And if it's not, it can't go ahead. And also, sustainability should not be seen as a standalone. It's shifting, I can see that shift, but quite often you go into an institution, it's sustainability and everything else. And actually it needs to be enmeshed and embedded in everything that we do. So it needs to be part of our 5-year plan, it needs to be part of our annual report, it needs to be in every strategic document that our institution has. It even needs to be in your condition and treatment report. So if any of you are freelance conservators, when you write a quote or an estimate for a client, it should include in there the climate cost, the carbon cost of the work, so the client is informed. And then when you put your invoice in at the end, you can also put in the carbon cost of that treatment as well, so they can see the impact or reduced impact that their choices has made. It needs to become part of our everyday working life in the same way that health and safety has become. So do think about the impact, what you're doing, what you're using. Could you do it differently? Does it need to be done at all? Why do you keep the collections they have, and heaven forbid, could they be de-accessioned? Like I said, do you need to have so many exhibitions a year? Can you use your own collections? And why aren't we saying no to the funders that have links to fossil fuels? We are at a pivotal moment in history with the opportunity to create that transformational change that's required. We can make conservation and collections care what we want, and we can challenge the outdated and restrictive practices that both damage the planet and prevent diversity and inclusion. As conservators, we are well placed to do this because we take the long view. We don't think about the next year or 5 years. We are thinking decades, if not hundreds of years into the future. Plus, we have the scientific knowledge, the understanding, and the creative brain. So I want to do an activity with you now, and there is a prize. So a little incentive, there is a prize for this. What I would like you to do is just take a sheet of paper, back of an envelope. Same for you, you're online as well. And I would like you to write, in about 5 minutes, 50 ways that we could transform how we package collections for storage and transport to be sustainable. Now, I want you to be as creative as you want to be. You can be completely wacky, completely off the wall. They do not have to be sensible suggestions. And there is a very good reason for saying 50. You'll hair through the first 10, 12, something like that. You'll go really fast and then you'll hit a brick wall. You won't be able to get any further. And that's when the creative ideas start to flow. And what you'll also see is you'll start to repeat. You'll start to say the same thing, but in a slightly different way. And that's showing you what is important to you. So what we are then going to do is you've got 5 minutes to do your 50 ways. Yes, you might not get 50 done, but give it a good go. So 5 minutes to do that, and we'll come back together and we're going to share what you've suggested, your transformational ideas. And then I would like you to pick your top 5, and then we are going to select one as the overall, and it's that one that gets the prize. So it's over to you for 5 minutes. Right then, who wants to share? Who wants to be the first to speak? What have you got? Yeah.
So I think that the trucks that are used to move art should have like a roller blind that you can pull out from the back of the truck. So when you open the doors, you can take the roller blind to where it's to make a rain sheet passage to the destination. So the bridge the gap between the loading bay and the truck with a roller blind. And then you won't need any company.
Brilliant. How about you?
Well, my first thought was asking if you really need to move it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
When I trained when I first graduated, the thinking then was that if an object was so sensitive to fluctuating environment, you should just not lend it. And if you don't lend those super sensitive objects, then you don't need to think about the layers and layers of protection. And so just lend the most robust things.
And then you're requested, and then apparently you can't use.
Like,
Okay, anybody else?
But you for items like that, you could just have a facsimile of that,
Yep.
that art or sculpture, which they do at 3 and 8.
So in 2000, I worked at the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, and they look after the only known letter to Shakespeare. I went round their museum, and they had it in the bit where you have the signs, so for the people to read outside of the case, it really illuminated from behind. And I thought, crikey, it was actually a copy. And this was this was 2000, and even then it was so good that you couldn't really tell. You had to get really close to it. So yeah, let's use copies. Anyone else?
Then we know that one step further and use digital models.
Digital
And
models,
because with VR, you can do a lot of things. And we've done a lot of shared development and make our furniture with 3D models, and you can actually reconstruct them as they were originally intended,
Yeah.
which today a lot of objects have been altered anyway,
yeah.
beyond recognition, and they don't actually look at all what they would have looked like originally. And if we have that information to digitally reenacted, you can redo it.
Yeah.
And with very good modeling software, you can move into this object. We have some VR headset. You literally do amazing things and get the real color scheme back, etc. So you can virtually carry out virtual conservation, no solving required to do it.
So no object moving, we're just sending a file.
Correct.
Thank you.
I wrapped things with lots of nails and staples, but I think you could use Velcro as a recyclable, reusable fixing instead of sellotape as well. Yeah.
Also the craft tape, the paper-based tape.
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
sellotape.
Self-adhesive tape. Too many years in conservation.
So for short-term transport, I was thinking about reusing things like all the Amazon packaging that I get from the post.
Yes.
Using old bed sheets and pillowcases and cloth instead of, so reusing textiles and different things, I'm sure. All for short-term, it should all be fine. And I was thinking about my cereal box the other day, that I have a square cereal box with a liner inside, and fundamentally you could use that as a packing box or something in short term.
Yeah. So do we have any more?
I think that before that, my thinking was always, do I need to pack it? And how many layers it needs? Because sometimes things are packed in 3 layers, for example, tissue, poly, card, I'm thinking about the painting. Maybe for the movement that is going to happen, just needs some layer, extra layers.
And also keep your packaging and reuse what you've had. Because as long as it's sound, then it comes back and you reuse.
Right. Oh, hello.
I think it's also, if you travel, if you have to travel, then you can look at ways, your mode of transport as well. So does it have to fly, or can it go by truck or by boat?
Sorry.
Or by train. if
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
you know,
train
it
as well,
depends.
yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking of large exhibitions, so but even if single ones.
Thank you. There was someone at the back.
That was literally what I was
So we've got times 2 then. Okay. So for the benefit of the people who are watching this online, who may not be able to see this. So we've got thinking about your mode of transport when you're moving things, about putting a roller blind on trucks to protect the objects from the weather so you don't need to wrap them so much. Do we actually need to move things in the first place? Not lending things that are fragile, sending out only the robust material. Using copies, so not actually displaying the originals but displaying copies, and also digital models of materials. Using Velcro, so that can be reused instead of pressure sensitive tape. Reusing packaging that's not designed for conservation materials, for collections, just for short term, because that should be perfectly fine, and we can put a small wrapper inside if we need to. And then reusing packaging that has been used to wrap collections. And then, do we need to pack it at all? And that's it. So which ones of these would be our number one? Which one would you like to vote for? Let me number them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so we've got 1 is mode of transport, 2 is the roller blind, 3 is do we need to move it, 4 is don't lend, using copies, 5 and 6, using Velcro, number 7, reusing our packaging that we get from other things like Amazon packaging. Number 9 is do we need to pack it, and number 10 is reusing the packaging that our collections have been moved in the first place. So, votes for number 1. Okay, votes for number 2. 4. We only get 1 vote, I have to say. So no extra voting. Number 3, do we need to move it? We've got 2. Do we need to? Don't lend anything that's fragile, only lend things that are robust. 1. Using copies. 2, 3. Digital models. 1, 2, 2. Using Velcro instead of pressure-sensitive tape. 2. And then reusing packaging that's been 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. And then, do we need to pack it at all? So yes, and then reusing our packaging that collections come in. So we've got 2 and 8 that are the same. So what do I do here? Shall I make an executive decision? So whose suggestion was number 8? It was you, Lynn, wasn't it?
Reusing packaging.
Reusing the packaging. You'll find out why I do you not want to unwrap it and show everybody what you've got?
Can we use it?
Yes, it's all reused. It's all reused packaging.
Oh, where's the opening? You wonderful person. Look at the book.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, look, was that my timer?
Don't know, I think it's incidental. Thank you very much.
Lorraine, would you like to take it into
Yeah, anybody's got anything they want to ask?
How have you addressed insurances? Because they can be terribly impactful on what decision you make to too late now. It almost determines what form of packaging you do it in transportation.
You need to be educated as well.
So
Yeah.
the question was for people who may not have heard, if you're watching this online, is the impact of insurers. In talking to the insurers, more about environmental conditions than anything else, the external insurers will say, we're not worried about environmental conditions, and the packaging is what the owner wants. They don't set the conditions, it's entirely up to the owners. So if they said, yes, putting it in a plastic bag and moving it is fine, that's what the insurers would be happy with, because that would be in the insurance policy. So they quite often get blamed as the cause, but actually, I think sometimes it's shifting it from having those conversations with the insurers. And I suppose if you are concerned with your insurers, to have a conversation with them. And that's what they want. They want us to talk to them. And when I've, in a different instance, actually done this around my business insurance, they're so helpful. They really are. They want to help. And if they can't help, just move to a different insurer. There's plenty of them out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think where I work, we are fortunate enough to have a lot of storage space. So for transport cases, we will keep them and refurbish as and when needed. So that keeps the manufacturing of new crates down considerably. But what we fit them out with is not sustainable. And there are programs where you can send certain materials back, but only in large quantities. So, you know, you try, but you kind of you get to hurdles quite quickly.
Yeah, I understand that because I work a lot with small museums, or indeed as a sole trader, as a conservator. So, you know, you might create 10 pairs of nitrile gloves as waste over a 6-month period. Well, that's not going to go anywhere to be recycled. So what do you do? This is where we come back to this thinking differently. This is where we now have to start working together and say, okay, I've got X amount of packaging, you're a really big museum, you've got X amount of packaging. Let's collaborate and work together and actually sort this out. And it's happening with the South Kensington Museum. So there's a website called South Kenzen. So the South Kensington Museums and other organisations in the South Kensington area have come together, including the educational establishments, to actually address sustainability. And it is then, therefore, the larger organisations helping out with the smaller. And that's what we need to be doing. We can't just say to a smaller organisation, I'm sorry, we're a big organisation, creating lots of this with lots of resources. We can sort it out, but you can't. We have to work together. We haven't got time to keep creating barriers for one another.
I think, oh, that might be Anne.
There's a question about
When you're teaching residency to conservation and protection for staff and coming up with working with other reasons and coming up with sustainable ideas for repackaging, have you found a common motivator between them? Is it it's low cost and that's why they're implementing these sustainable methods, or is it also more so that they want to create this really sustainable environment?
Okay, so for the benefit of people again who are watching the recording, the question is the common motivators for taking sustainability actions. I would say yes, cost is a factor, so it's saving money. Initially the drive might be yes, I want to take sustainability actions, but then quite often you'll find that yes, saving money is part, particularly if we're talking about saving energy costs. So with the rising cost of energy, the motivator behind that quite often is not sustainability. It is actually, crikey, electricity and gas cost a lot of money now, so what can we do to actually reduce the amount that we're using? Which is great, because the co-benefit of that is, you know, it's reducing emissions and it's making the institution more sustainable. So it's a mix of the two, so sometimes it will be one, and it's all it takes, one dedicated member of staff in an organisation, which from that ripples out and you find that sustainability then happens across the organisation to, yes, we want to save money.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. So I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker for the evening, Jaap van der Berg. So I met Jaap last year actually. We met in Amsterdam at a Go Green workshop, part of the EU Go Green initiative. We're looking at developing a decision-making model for green conservation practice, both for conservators and preventive conservators. And I was chatting with Jaap just now before this evening about how long he's been working in conservation, and he said to me 50 years. And I thought, wow. But he said you started your journey very early when you were 11.
Yes,
Right.
yes, helps.
So Jaap is based in Belgium. Briefly, after graduating from university in Amsterdam in 1985, he studied organics, polymers, wood, leather and paper and textiles, sap conservation that you did from the early times. And then has worked as head of collections management for the Royal Dutch Arms and Army Museum and has also been project manager at Museums of Ethnology in Leiden. This sort of developing experience has led Jaap through the years to develop what we now call preventive conservation. He has been involved with many institutions, various IIC Netherlands, Restorers Netherlands, ECHO, Europe and Austria, CEN and more. There's more people he's been involved with, and has worked for many years working with the art packing and shipping industries, developing collection, care and consultation. And one thing I just want to say, that through his working life, Jaap has learned that sharing knowledge is at the core of good preventive conservation practice. He's put this into practice by setting up training programs for conservation technicians, teaching preventive conservation at the ICN, and through giving many workshops. So I'd like to introduce Jaap now to his talk, which is called Rethinking Creating. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, Lorraine, for your presentation. I'm afraid we're going to double up a couple of things. But being a conservator will never be exactly the same. Anyway, so let's see where we're going. What I find in discussion about sustainability often is it's kind of found as being a contrast or a fight we have to do because we are working in stuff and we need to get it across, like there's a confrontation there. And I hope I can show you that it actually is not. It's a benefit. Sustainable mindset, I mention it now and I probably will mention it at the end of my presentation because I forgot it in the meantime in between. But it is there. And my presentation will have these 6 topics, and I list them as if there's going to be a sequence in it. Well, there's not, because they're interlinked. But I hope I'll tackle all of them in the next half an hour and a bit. Whenever you're thinking of stuff and you want to change things, you have to start wondering, why are we doing what we're doing? And one of the main characteristics in finding what we are doing is we've got a huge workload and we've got a very limited time span, money, people, and we can't do everything we want to do. So what we end up doing to tackle that all is we develop routines. And to make it easier, we copy routines that someone else has developed a couple of decades ago. And that is the way we're working. That is the way we're doing what we're doing. Routines, if you look at the definition of it, it's a task you can't perform without thinking. And why would you change that? Because it works, doesn't it? I'll give you a couple of examples. This is our cat at home. Wakes us up early in the morning, scratching against the doors. I want to get in. And you open the door, she directly straight go to her feeding bowl, which is sitting on the ladder. We're living on the first floor. There's a stairway going downstairs, and there's one going up. And she's there, and she starts to rummage around in the feed bowl, and it ends up a floor lower. So us being tired and early in the morning, wanted to wake up, have to go all the way downstairs to get the feed bowl for the cat to fill it up with the feed that the cat wants. In the end, the cat is happy and has its food. So it works. The routine she has developed and throwing everything around the place has an end result of having food. So why change? Another example, I was in Australia a couple of decades ago on an exhibition of Beyond Javasi, and the routine in the museum was that you've got those tables and you cover up the table with Tyvek the moment you start working on it with exhibitions. I was a guest conservator there for the exhibition, and I had to follow the routines of the people that you were working with. That's the way you do it. So I was working on this object on a table covered with Tyvek. But then it's coffee time, coffee break, It's very important. We need to do that in set times, and off we go. And to prevent the object from getting dirty, you cover it with Tyvek. It's a big project, it's a big exhibition, so you work in teams. We were the conservators. We were the ones that were doing work with the objects. There was another team, the conservation technicians, as we would call them, doing the transportation. They were collecting the objects from the storage, from the crates and everything, putting them into baskets, and bringing those baskets up into the rooms where we were working. And they got the consignment that you can only put those baskets on tables that are covered with Tyvek, because that's the tables that are okay. So when I came back from my coffee and I went to my table where I was working on bark cloth exhibition stuff, where I had a Tyvek covered table with bark cloth covered with Tyvek, I found a basket of objects on top of that. It's a routine, and it did work. The objects got there. It was a bit of a challenge to get it off. Who's wrong here? That's often the question you get. And that is one of the reasons that we don't change, is that we're always kind of getting into the blame mode. If something goes wrong or something doesn't go ideal, we want to know who we can blame about it. And that is, I think, the most crucial thing, and that's why we don't change stuff. If you want to change stuff, you have to take risks. If you take risks, things might go different from what you planned it to do. Well, so what? So we learned. We only know what we know now because we learned in the meantime. So the question should be, what happened and why did it happen? Not who made the mistake. Every object that's put on show, you always do it with two people hanging a painting, even if it's a tiny painting. So those guys are actually elbowing each other out of the way because they want to be in the shot as well. Don't underestimate that. The effect that the photographer has on the people that want to be in the shot. We're not going to talk about the cotton gloves. And because it has to make some measurements, you need a pencil which you put behind your ear. And then you're working with a Rembrandt painting there which is not covered by any glass. It's a routine, and this guy also wants to have his personal belongings on his back, just to be sure that nobody else runs away with it. One of the basic things of working and trying to change stuff is if you trust people. If you can't trust them with your belongings lying somewhere, then maybe it's not the right environment for you to work in. But that's a personal opinion. Then what happens also is, well, okay, the exhibition is gone, everything is on display, and then, oh, still we have to clean it. And just to clean it, we'll bring some dust into the air to prevent the dust from coming on the objects. We cover it up with a bit of Tyvek, the always present Tyvek. Hanging around the object, a bit of Tyvek there, and if you really look at what's happening now, okay, so the worst case scenarios, we're very good as conservators to pinpoint the worst case scenarios and make that the only reality we'll be confronted with. So the worst case scenario, there will be dust, and this dust will be settled on this Tyvek. And then we have to remove this Tyvek, which will mean there will be dust in the air again. So what have we actually prevented from happening? It's such a routinely done thing. There's other ways to get rid of the dust in the air. The thing with routines is, it's not thinking. We are just doing it because we're always doing it. And it's a lot in line with what you said earlier. We have to be more aware of what we're doing. And not just because it's sustainable. Obviously, that's great. But also because it's better for our objects, better for our budgets, better for a lot of things. We have got a lot of expectations. And I'm focusing on packaging now. And we're doing stuff, we have got those routines because we expect them to work. Why do we pack objects? We want to protect it. against what? Well, protecting. You haven't seen it yet? All examples of protection on objects. The most common denominator of protected objects, in a way as they are now, is that they are hidden. And you could just see, when Lynn was unpacking her package, how often it was rolled around in getting the material off of it. It's actually increasing the amounts of handling we're doing, which is not actually very fine, very nice for the objects themselves. I always love this one. Any idea what's underneath here?
Sink.
Sorry?
Sink. Water sink.
No, it's a beastie.
Turtle shell tortoise.
And it's protected. No. Here we've got the chips. They're still in use and they're sustainable now because they're made of biodegradable products. Well, just don't use them. And because it's a lucky dip. Underneath in here was a tableau with dung beetles and a scorpion. It's lucky the scorpion is dead. We've got the polyethylene sheeting around an object. It's protecting the object. You can see here the puncture through it. So where, if you're putting this package down, the object, the corner of it, the stone, is actually not protected anymore on the bit which is supposed to have the most protection. But it's handled, and packed objects are anonymous. A packed object is not an object, it's a packing. Even when you have someone sitting there watching you putting a vase into a box, you close up the box and you let the person walk with it, the person is walking with a box, not with a vase. So this person was walking with a packed bit of acid-free tissue paper, in which was sitting an ivory carved ship's model in multiple pieces. And there's also another thing, whenever we find a cavity in an object which we are packing, we want to fill it up. Textile collections around here, anybody has them? Shoes, they have to be filled up. Why? Why do you fill it up? What protection do you actually think this paper is doing to the edge of the basket? None whatsoever. So, when we're doing things out of routine, we should question ourselves, what do we expect the material to do? Also, when we've got an object packed, we should think about what's happening with my packed object. I'll mention it now, and probably a couple of times earlier as well. Later, I mean. Paintings live vertical. Paintings travel vertical. So what comes with a crate, in a painting's crate, it's packed. It's a crate I'm working with now, not a painting, it's a crate. I'll have to tilt it to get it away from the dolly. I'll have to put it flat. If we're lucky, it's enough flat friction on the floor to prevent the crate from sliding on it. And then it's flat. Take away the lid, takes a lot of space, and then in the end, you've got a painting in a crate, which is weird. Why have you got an object living vertical, construed in a way that it handles gravity? It travels vertical. And we pack it horizontal. Why? We've always done it like that, yeah? Most common denominator of what we're doing, you're using a lot of material, all this addition of the materials into the packing of an object is handling, and we are hiding the object. Sometimes that can be artistic, but it's not always the case. I've packed crystals, even that is challenging in itself. Never underestimate, never overestimate your own professionality. Yes, we're all professionals. Yes, we are always very conscientious about the fact that we're handling artifacts, objects, heritage, but we are animals as well. And we are very much triggered in what we're doing with what we're handling. And when we're handling a box, we're handling a box. And when I'm moving it and I feel something shifting and got it, oof, oh yeah, there's something in it, experience. So, go back to basics. Why do we pack? We pack to prevent damage. And damage is a thing, change. Prevent conservation. I'm not preventing damage, I'm protecting the object, I'm not going to change the object as it is. Every cause of change involves energy. And what's the most encountered form of energy? Any idea? Physical forces. That's the most that's happening continuously around us. And these physical forces, we've got them in a static shape, and when the object is static, there's the thing called gravity that's always pulling on an object, on us, on whatever we encounter. And objects are construed in such a way that they withstand that vertical tension. Otherwise, there will be just a heap of things on the floor. And we've got dynamic kind of physical force. The dynamic kind of physical force always involves a certain mass, a weight, and the speed. That's the combination that makes the quantity of the dynamic force. And the speed, you only can get speed when you got movement, when you got a way of creating speed. So actually what you want to do in packing and protecting an object is you want to minimize handling. You want to minimize the input of energies. You want to minimize the speed an object can create in its direct environment. And most of all, you want to be aware of what you're doing in every aspect of what you're doing. Continuously question. I've got a couple of colleagues who are very tired when they're working with me because I continuously, they say you're like a 4 or 5 year old child. Continually asking, why are you doing this? What do you expect? But that's the only way you're going to change stuff. You're going to be more aware of what you're doing and what the consequences are. For this, a couple of years, we developed the 8-step approach. And the awareness is, first of all, what are we working with? What's my object collection / anything? It's got certain characteristics. Think on that. Then you've got a route. You want to do something with it. Even if you take it from one table to the other table, that's a route you're confronted with. And maybe you want to play it, want to throw it around. And so you look at that. A different thing. Don't have the object all the time and don't work it sequential, but have an analysis of the route, what you want to do with it. Have an analysis of the object. And then you've got 3. You find stuff, you find an object which is very fragile, and you find that the idea is to throw it down the stairs. Not the best combination. So you're going to change that. You're going to change either the sensitivity of your object or the route you want to take with it. And only then, step 4, you're going to be aware of what you need to protect the object in a certain situation. So you're halfway your 8 steps and you haven't done anything. But you've saved a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. When you're looking at an object, you're looking at the gravity of an object, the way the object is construed to withstand the gravitational forces. Is it made out of parts? How are those parts put together? Which materials are they made of? What is the finish of the material? Textile, when there is some paint over it, becomes a very different material from when there is no paint over it. Is degradation, and are there other repairs, etc. in it? When you're looking at the root, you're actually looking at 10 agents of decay. I'll come back to them later, but they're very well known, I guess, everybody here around in the room. And then, protection, somebody else already said, layers and layers and layers of protection. Well, that's actually the best way of protecting an object, working in layers. So when we're looking at the composition of objects, for packing, all these, we won't be able to work on that this evening. So I'm focusing on gravity components and construction. Whenever you're looking at gravity, you try to pinpoint where's the center of gravity in my object. And even as humans have been made in such a way that we can withstand from the center of gravity the pull of force on there. If we move around, you can change the working of the gravitational forces. And if it gets a bit away out of the center of the construction of the object, you need some support. If you've got the center of gravity of an object and you can't get there, because often it's a conceptual thing and it's not a physical thing, you can move that wee birdie all over the place just on the tip of your finger. You don't need to do anything else. You might get a bit tired in the end, but it's safe as long as it stays there. What you have to be aware of then is the first law of motion. And that is something we tend to forget. Whenever there is a mass, this mass will have a certain speed in a certain direction, and it will keep that speed and direction until a moment that some other force comes into it to change it. Which means that if I've got an object, and this object has a center of gravity, and I handle it here, you all will see what will happen. It starts to wobble if you move it sideways. Yeah. How come? Because I can control my center of gravity, and still when I move it sideways, you can see that when you do it with a bottle of water, you put it at the bottom, underneath the center of gravity, put it away, it will fall over. That is because it takes time for the sideways energy, which I'm putting on here, to travel through the object to the other centers of gravity, because this object has not one center of gravity. This object has a multitude of centers of gravities. I'm just taking to the big ones, I'm leaving out the berries. If I want to prevent any tension in this object, I have to handle all those centers of gravity at the same time, into the same direction. And that will prevent it from starting to wobble and having this time span in energies. So you need at least 2 colleagues to handle it properly. You can work very well with those people, and the moment you're moving it, they're moving it as well. No. I've worked with a lot of people, never happens. So you have to find something else, some other means of getting a support which is solid enough to get all those centers of gravity moving at the same time in the same direction with the same speed. Because if you don't do that, then you'll create friction and you get tension in your object, you get damage. Another thing which has got a lot of centers of gravity we tend to forget are paintings. Often talked about as two-dimensional objects. Well, no. Not even, I'm not talking about Kiefer's, but most paintings are not two-dimensional. If you just look at the amount of parts a painting has, it's phenomenal. And we never are aware of that up till the moment that there's a crack there. Only then we will say, well, we'll be aware of the fact, okay, so this weight of the lady with her stretcher frame is resting on this wee wooden beam here, which is only glued together on that bit. The rest is loose. So maybe better not handle it on the sides only. Well, that's a thing we have to be doing every time we're handling an object. You have to, every time. Why does it trigger that it's broken? Because there is light. But there's light here as well. When there is space, then my one mass of gravity has got space to move, to start building up speed, which creates energy and damage, possible damage. And then, when we're looking at those parts of an object, which an object is made of, we have to be aware what is the function of those parts. Because quite a lot of stuff we encounter, we see first in our objects, is just supposed to be pretty. It's not supposed to have any tension of any structure. Plaster frames are just, the plaster is just to make it decorative, to make it acceptable for people in those days, or us, whoever. But what do we do in a routine? You've got objects, the painting, it's got a nice frame on it, and it's got its decorative parts, and we put it face down on the tabletop. So the energy, the weight, which is in the painting, which is supposed to be hanging down from a hanging system, is now working 90 degrees opposite on it. And we do that because we want to have so many layers of packaging around it. And we only can do that when it's lying flat. And that's the routine we've created. Everything is wrong about this routine, if you look at it. Why do you put a big painting flat? When you do condition reporting, it's a lot easier to look all over the place without ruining your back when it's vertical instead of when it's lying flat. And then the tape, the Tyvek tape experience, getting all this material off, and we want to have it clean because we want to reuse it, and you get a bit frustrated, and all the energy that goes into ruining the Tyvek also goes into your object. I'm talking about the decorative part of objects. Veneer on furniture is very often underestimated. It's also a decorative part. Veneer is not supposed to have any tension on it. It's not supposed to have any bubbles in it. It's just stay away from it. And when we're doing it, when we're moving furniture, it's always covered up with a cloth, preferably, or with bubble wrap, because we still like that. Why? And if you take it away, we don't have experience when you're moving furniture. You've got those professional movers, blankets going over it, and then with a professional move of a magician, you take it away, and you've got that wee sound, ching, when that blanket is clipped behind your veneer, and you've got this musical fragment. So all that goes into the assessment of an object. It takes time. The better you know your object, the quicker you can do it. You have to do it. Then you're going to look into your roots. I'm just going to mention two extremes. If you're going over a country road, there is more impact of shocks and vibrations than you'll have when you're having a move-in stores. And then, which is the 10 agents of decay, you run into that. All of them, every agent of decay is energy. So actually what you're doing when you're doing proper packing is energy management. Sounds super sustainable. So it's not a fight, it works. Well, everything is energy. optimizing an object. That is tricky, because my object is my historical given, so who am I to optimize it? But most of us are aware of the old record player. None of us is ever going to move that like it is now. When you're going to move it, you'll take away the arm and you clip it in place. You'll pick off the record and you'll solidify the turntable, or solidify it, try to block it against rotating. But that's an improvement of the object without changing the object. You take away a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of tension and energy creating spots. And sometimes you decide to have this 13 meters long canoe from a carved out tree, and it is brought in ages ago in the attic, and in the meantime fire department have built walls in between in the attic, and you can't get it down, you have to go through the roof. Alternative is cut off the boat, which is not acceptable. So you change the route you want to take, you adapt the object you have, and only then you look at what you need to protect against. This is a couple of data I got from Berg. I don't know if anybody knows him. Based on the studies of over 3,000 objects, and they have had nearly 10,000 object movement. Interesting thing, the object has moved 10,000 times, handling moments twice as much. And there were 197 changes. Out of these changes, 113 were unacceptable, so to say. 58 were handling errors. 10 were due to packaging. And 29 were unknown, but we might make the same split up as we have. If you're handling your object less, if you make it more easy just to touch it once and not anymore, then you already reduce your risks with 75%. And as we said earlier, that the amount of handling we do is often combined with the amount of layers we put around objects. What creates most damage is handling. And then we are going into what protection do we need. Do you know this guy? Famous Dutch philosopher, a state philosopher, Johan Cruyff, football player, some of us might know him. He's come up with this couple of great slogans when you're a footballer. If you don't have the ball, you can't lose it. That kind of truth he's always been working with. And one of it is Elk Nadel heeft zijn voordeel. He's from Amsterdam, as I am. Every disadvantage has its advantage. Said it as well. There is no perfect. There's always a setback. If anybody tells you this solution is foolproof, always works, forget it, and he hasn't looked at it enough. The best salesperson will tell you when this does not work, but for the rest it does. So you establish necessary protection. You want to minimize movement. I have to look at my time. One of the things that we find is when you want to minimize movement, you make a nice and snug fit for your object. So you take a pack of foam, you measure up your object, you cut out parts of your foam and you slide in your object so that it sits nice and snug and it doesn't move anymore. It looks like that. So you've got a nice and tailor fit, and I can move the cushion or the foam with it and the object doesn't have any movement afterwards. But a tight fit is friction. A not tight fit is movement. So you can't do it right. Not when you're working with packs of foam. What do you want to do? You have to be aware that movement is only got 3 directions, or a combination of those 3. movement goes vertical, straight away from me or towards me or across me. That's the three movements an object has. If you block them, you stabilize the object. So when we've got the same drum, to prevent upwards movement, downward movement is already prevented, otherwise it will be on the floor. So I've got something underneath that I can lift it with. I need to prevent it from moving up. I just block the upward movement. Easy. To do that, you need to make a construction to put it, but we'll get to that. Sideways movement for the circle, you don't need more than 3 points to prevent the circle from moving any sideways direction. That's all you need material-wise. Then you might say, well, my center of gravity is a bit high here. That is not solid, so it might topple. So then either you can give it better support over the center of gravity, you've got it packed. That is all you need. Or you make sure that your support on the top is big enough to prevent sideways movement, because the diagonal is always bigger than the straight line. And that's all you need. So you don't need that much stuff. Take away movement, work modular, use standard solutions. The only thing tailor-make you do is straight layer out your object. And from that point on, you work with preset measurements. And the only thing you want to do, you want to prevent these objects from moving freely in this box. And you can do it like this, or you can put some pins through it, which is not really nice if it's not done by the artist himself. We use a lot of polystyrene, actually. And that is an opinion thing. People might have a different opinion. If I'm putting something in my storage, and my intention is to keep it there for the next 300 years, then it does not get into the environment. So I'm preventing waste by using something which I don't throw away. And just pins in points where I think it can handle is enough to prevent movement. And if you want to prevent upward movement, you might tie it down, you might push it down. This is a honeycomb. It's another alternative. It's not as easy as polystyrene, but it's an alternative. And it is not something that we invented. If you look, what we should do more is look at the commercial world. If you look at how the IKEA has developed in material use and the packaging they do, I'm not saying we must make flat packs out of all our paintings, but the concept they have in preventing movement, because that's all they're doing in their packing, preventing movement. I've got a box, my laptop is sitting in it, it's slotted in here so it can't move, and because this has got three-dimensional, it's more three-dimensional than my laptop, I've got some extra space. In the extra space I put the accessories. It takes some time to think it out, but this is safe. It's all paper, it's all plant-based material. Why not? The basic idea is skeletal frame, what is it? I've got a Madonna, plaster, damage to the edges, very loose pigments all over it, difficult to handle, but not broken in all bits. So what we do, we measure the biggest measurements. We create a rib construction around it where it sits safe from all ends. Can be cardboard, can be wood, plenty of choices. This is all recycled materials. We found it because we happened to have it. And you prevent the movement, horizontal movement, with blocking it. staples and wood and cardboard, that's all you need. And then when you go up, we don't want the banana to go up, so we tie it down the strap. You can staple it, you can do it with Velcro, anything. If it doesn't go up, doesn't create any energy there. And you want to prevent it from falling over, and for that you will find you need a horizontal bar over the center of gravity to prevent it from toppling. You can pick whatever you want. You can decide, well, okay, here underneath her hands, that's a bit that's solid, I want to have the support there. Or you might decide that you want to do it on her chin. Your choice, you know the object, you've looked at it, step one what you did, and you can solidify it there. And these are all options. So you take away movement. And for that, you start to look at the way the object is used. Painting, sitting on a sill, is moved. On a sill, I can transport a frame. Something which is hanging in a church is hanging there because there's a construction beneath it, otherwise it would be on the floor. With the same construction, I can hang it in a movable construction. That's all you need. And from that moment, and actually it lives in that. It goes in storage, it goes in show, you can do your condition reporting with that same frame. It's all standard. Dead birdies, all the concept is the same. Where is my center of gravity? I solidify it around there, and it's got more centers of gravity, I need just more supports. But I'm working out of a stretcher frame. Just thinking about time. When you're considering things, you have to be honest with yourself. What I find often is that in designing storages, we forget that we only got stuff because we want to get it out of storage. If you've got a collection you don't want to get out of storage, throw it away. You want to use it. And one of the biggest challenges is moving big, huge horizontal items. So if you don't have to have it horizontal, keep it vertical. It's one of the reasons why I don't like drawers in storages. A drawer is a box with limitations, and 3 times as expensive, if not more. Think about your route. If you've got a giraffe that has to go through Amsterdam, and the giraffe is higher from the container, from the truck, higher than the streetcar wires are, then you better put it down front. And that's the way it lives for a while. It's solid. This is the first giraffe that's taken out of Africa and mounted somewhere in 1901. Very heavy, very solid. There's a lot of things you can do with it. You should just not want to touch it. And not just because of the object's fragility, but also because of the toxicity in the object. So give your object handles. Make sure that it moves. Make sure that you only handle the object once to put it in there. And for the rest, your object moves, but it's not handled anymore. So all that input goes away from it. All the material you put around it, you don't need to put around it. If you're looking at chandeliers, same thing, copy it. Make a ceiling, which means that you have to have some vertical stands, otherwise you won't have a ceiling. And from that moment, from then on, you can solidify or take away the swinging movement underneath the center of gravity. You can even make it look slick. Doesn't have to be. Has to work. I'll just skip this. You have to be aware of what you're doing. This is a big mask. It's about 3.5 meters high, 2.5 meters wide, 80 centimeters deep. It's too big to get out of the storage, vertical, so it has to go into horizontal movement. And because we know that already when we're designing the packing, we make sure that there's a kind of a hammock So we'll tilt it that way so that the skirt will be supported by the hammock underneath it. And just leave it there without sending upright. Why not? It doesn't do any damage. No reason to take it away. So then you've got your frame, you've got your object which doesn't move. Then you can hide it, because there's no movement there anymore. So then you can decide, oh, I want to have a climate buffering, plaster climate buffer, who wants? Okay, you can put stuff around it. You can just put some plastic around it against dust, or humidity changes, you put some cardboard against it. Cardboard, the best alternative. If you really want to change stuff, start playing around with cardboard. Corrugated cardboard, 2 layers, it's very solid, gives you a lot of physical sturdiness, a lot of physical protection, and it's a great buffer against humidity. Your object will not have any impact of changes of temperature, your organic object, because the humidity will be instantly corrected by the huge surface of cardboard you have there, provided that your cardboard is not too humid and comes from the attic or someone else. In this layering approach, in the thinking process of what do I need, what material I'm going to use, you can look back or take some other big documents, which is in draft now for the Go Green project, UNESCO funded. It's a nice project. It's 5 presentations in itself, so we're not going to do it here. Just want to point out for you that it is there. I'll have the website later, and we'll probably be publishing something about that in the future. The thing is, what I like is you've always got the before, the during, and the after, and then again the before. It's a circular thing. That's one of the things that we're tend to forget. So whatever we're doing now, we are going to undo later. So make it easy to undo it. And that is, for the rest, just take some time if you feel bored or anything. If you've got time, you need to have time, because it's a very constructive. I need to show? Yeah.
Have you got much time left?
I've got a couple more slides, not very many.
Okay.
Think modular. Make sure that your objects, you don't want to stack your objects, but you can stack your frames. These are examples of the same materials with different objects underneath it. The only tailor-made thing is inside the box. It doesn't move, and from then on you can work standard. From then on your routines are allowed to take over. Storage of paintings. We see them often now slid into a shelving that you have to pull them on the side of the painting towards you, which is actually not what a painting is made for, so that is an easier bit. Alternatives. I'm going to show the most debatable one. This painting, the holes on which the screws are attached, which we depended on, they were used to have some screws put it on the cardboard. The cardboard is slid into another stack of cardboards, covered up with cardboard. We put wrapping paper around it and shipped it with DNA to Canada. No problem at all with the thing. Another very basic thing for one of the discussions we have got, the light packaging, the not that posh packaging is soft packaging. And actually you shouldn't think about soft packaging, but you should be thinking about easy handling packaging. The easiest thing is having a cardboard. Sit your object against it. That one hanging in, you can puncture the cardboard with it, you fold your cardboard too, you tighten the sides, which creates a triangular friction around the side of your frame, it's done. You've got it packed. And it's way better protected than all those other soft packaging alternatives. It doesn't look posh. You can pick out some sort of nice tapes for it. That's it. So don't overdo it. If you do something just to be sure, then you're not sure what you've done. So with every argument, you just say for yourself, just to be sure to do that, rethink your process. Only do something when it reduces the risks that you'll encounter in the route you looked at. And going back to this, every advantage has a disadvantage. So what's the disadvantage of this approach? You require a lot more active knowledge about objects. You really have to be aware of how objects are construed, what the masses of parts are, and where the gravity is working on, and where the movements are working on. It requires more thinking, and it gives more responsibility to the person who's doing it. That's setbacks. I think that's professionalism, but okay, that's my opinion. So we got 3 seconds for questions. This will be, the website will be visible. This is my website, and that's it. Questions?
I'm going to make a radical suggestion, which is that we have some wine and some snacks next door, and that maybe if anyone wanted to ask you a question, they could do
That's
that
good.
over a snack. So thank you very much.